Good morning, everyone. It is Thursday. I don't know what day it is anymore. Good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, January the 7th, 2021. It is currently 11:18 a.m. Central Time. I'm here at Victory Baptist Church, and right here next to me are two books. First, The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. Yes, we're going to return to this book. But if you've been listening, you've been following us in our journey through the Imitation of Christ, you know that we've taken a slight detour. We've gone from the Imitation of Christ to the other book sitting here next to me, the Catholic Catechism, the Catechism of the Catholic Church. And the reason that we have taken a detour from the Imitation of Christ to open up the Catechism of the Catholic Church is because I believe that what Thomas à Kempis has spoken of in the chapter that we're in, I think the only way to interpret it is to interpret it in light of the Catholic Catechism. So that's why we have turned there, because if we're going to work our way through the book, we want to do so carefully. We want to make sure we're interpreting it correctly. And so that is what we're trying to do. And hopefully you found this very long series to be beneficial. When I say we're going to work through a book, I think people think, oh, this will be a quick overview. No, we're working through the book literally page by page, and hopefully you found it to be beneficial. Now, let's go here back to chapter 19. That's the chapter we're in. Book 1, chapter 19. Remember, the Imitation of Christ is broken down into different books. We're still in book 1, and we're in chapter 19. And the title of this chapter is Exercises of a Religious Person. All right. And when he says a religious person, most likely what Thomas à Kempis is referring to here is a religious person. In other words, someone who's a part of a religious order, right? A monk, a nun, etc., etc. However, we are taking what he's trying the spiritual principles that he's trying to put forth. We are trying to bring them, in a sense, outside of the monastery. And how can these principles apply to you and to I, who obviously not a monk, not a nun, not in a monastery? We live here in the real world. How do these principles apply to us? And I think you got to understand that he's writing as a Catholic monk. You've got to understand that perspective to interpret the book correctly. So when he says his exercises of a religious person, that's what he primarily has in mind. And he states this, very first line of this chapter: the life of a good religious person ought to be mighty in all virtues. The life of a good religious person ought to be mighty in all virtues. Okay. Now, when he says all virtues, I immediately thought, oh, he's referring to the virtues that is taught in Catholicism. I still think that that's possibly what he's referring to. I need to verify from, and I keep forgetting, I got to remind myself to do this today. I need to reach out to some people who are experts in the writings of Thomas à Kempis, and they probably would be able to say, yeah, that's probably what he's referring to, or no, that's not what he's referring to. So I got to verify that. I'm still going with the theory that's what he's referring to. Hey, if you're a religious person, obviously in a monastery, you're a monk, a nun, etc., any religious order, you got to be mighty. You should be mighty in all virtues. And then I think he's referring to the specific virtues outlined in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. And I want us to study these virtues. And we're studying these virtues for a couple of reasons. One, we want to determine, are these virtues biblical? Are they found in Scripture? And if they are scriptural virtues, then why don't we, as non-Catholics, why don't we emphasize them more? Why don't we preach about them more? Why don't we teach about them more? And we need to ask ourselves, another point here, we need to ask ourselves, are these virtues evident in our lives, or are they missing? So we are looking at these virtues. Now, how we're doing this is we're going to the Catholic Catechism. And if you go to page 443 in the Catholic Catechism, or if you're looking at up online, go to paragraph 1803. Paragraph 1803, and then you can just start looking and see everything they have to say about the virtues. Now, what we discovered is that there are four, according to Catholicism, there are four virtues, and these four virtues play a pivotal role and accordingly are called cardinal. These are the cardinal virtues, the four virtues. All other virtues are grouped around them. And here are the 4 cardinal virtues. Are you ready? Let's remind ourselves. Number 1, prudence. Prudence. What does it mean to be a prudent person? We looked up all the scriptures where the word prudent occurs, and many of those scriptures have now been placed in the VBC Bible Memory app so that you can start memorizing those scriptures about being prudent. If you download the Bible Memory app, go to groups, do a search for VBC, join our group, and then you can start. It gives you a 3-step process to memorize scripture and start memorizing scriptures about being prudent. Because trust me, we need more prudence within Christianity. We need more prudent people within churches, within Christianity. Look at everything that's happened in our world. We need the virtue of prudence. So start memorizing those scriptures. If you need help finding the app and how it works, email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. I'll be more than happy to help you out. All right, there you are. Prudent. It's free. We're not trying to get any money from you. It's free. All right. So there's the virtue of prudence. Now, today we come to the second virtue. The second virtue is justice. The virtue of justice. Wow. You talk about a dangerous term in 2021. It was a dangerous term in 2020. It was a dangerous term in 2019. So much has been talked about how this is usually how the accusation goes, those liberal churches, all they care about is social justice. All they care about is social justice. And when you start caring about social justice, then your church has become woke. It's become liberal. It's become progressive. And now it's ungodly. Well, is the virtue of justice a biblical virtue? And if it is, what does it mean? So we've got to be very careful that we don't condemn, quote unquote, social justice while throwing out the concept of the virtue of justice with it, right? We don't care about justice. No justice for this church. We don't believe in it. But if you say you're a church that cares about justice, people will think you're liberal and probably won't even consider visiting your church or listening to what you have to say. So how do we handle this? How do we work through this? Well, we're gonna really spend a lot of time on this, all right? Now, today I may just get you started. I want you to do some of this work for yourself. You know how this works. I don't like you being the passive listener. I don't want you sitting there. I want you, well, you can sit there, but I want you sitting there with a notebook, with a Bible, with a concordance, with a, maybe the Blue Letter Bible app. I want you engaged in the study. My job is, the way I view it, is we're doing study together. We're doing life together. We're doing theology together. And so I don't want you just listening to me. So sometimes I purposely don't I stop at a certain point trying to hope that you'll take up the study from there. And sometimes I don't know how effective that is. I don't know how well people like it, but I think it's important. Justice. Is it a virtue that's biblical, and is it a virtue that you and I need in your life and my life? Well, trust me, if it's a virtue, I know I need it in my life. We just got to determine if it's a biblical virtue, all right? So here we go. First, let's figure out how the Catholic Church describes this virtue, all right? Let's at least listen to their description, all right? Again, this virtue is called justice. Now, I'm going to turn the page in the Catechism, and I'm going to go to paragraph 1807. Paragraph 1807 in the Catholic Catechism. Justice. Here's what they have to say about it, all right? So it's one paragraph long here, all right? And they may offer some scripture, but that's okay. We'll see what they have to say here. Justice. This is how they describe it. Justice is the moral virtue. So it's a moral virtue. Justice is the moral virtue that consists in the constant and firm will to give their due to God and neighbor. All right, listen to this carefully. Justice is the moral virtue that consists in the constant and firm will to give their due to God and neighbor. Now, what do they mean by giving their due to God? Well, this is what they say. Justice towards God is called the virtue of religion. Justice towards men disposes one to respect the rights of each and to establish in human relationships the harmony that promotes equity with regard to persons and to the common good. All right, we need to stop right there. Now, just hearing some of that, I know some people, especially in maybe the conservative evangelical world, will be like, "Ooh, that sounds liberal. That sounds like some socialist nonsense." What are they referring to? Well, let's go through this again, right? Justice is the moral virtue that consists in the constant and firm will to give their due to God and neighbor. Justice towards God is called the virtue of religion. That's what justice towards God is called, the virtue of religion. Justice towards men, now that virtue of religion, that's something we may have to explore, but they decide to expound on the justice towards men aspect. And so we're going to focus on that right now. Justice towards men disposes one to respect the rights of each and to establish in human relationships the harmony that promotes equity with regard to persons and to the common good. The just man, often mentioned in the sacred scriptures, is distinguished by habitual right thinking and the uprightness of his conduct towards his neighbor. You shall not be partial to the poor or defer to the great, but in righteousness shall you judge your neighbor. Right? That's a reference to Leviticus chapter 19, verse 15. Masters, treat your slaves justly and fairly, knowing that you also have a master in heaven. That's Colossians 4:1. So they say, and let's read this again, the just man who is mentioned in the sacred scriptures is distinguished by habitual right thinking and the uprightness of his conduct toward his neighbor. This is a call that we have justice in the way we treat people, justice in the way we view people, justice in how we conduct ourselves around people, how we conduct ourselves within our relationships. We do so in a just way. Now, we need to unpack this. And again, what we need to first establish is, how does this idea of justice, how is it played out? How is it explained? How is it defined in Scripture itself? So here's what I will challenge you to do. All right. I'm going to go open up the Blue Letter Bible app. You already knew where I was going if you've been with us for any of our studies. Let's look up the word justice. I'm going to look up the word justice. And it occurs 28 times in the King James Version of the Bible. 28 times. This goes from Genesis all the way to the end. All right. The first occurrence is in the book of Genesis. All right. So let's just go through some of these scriptures and see if they offer any help. I'm not going to go through all of them because I want you to do some of this work yourself, but I'm going to start working through. Maybe we'll work through them all at some point. We'll see. A lot has to do on the feedback I get, but we'll see. Here we go. The first occurrence happens in Genesis 18:19. Genesis chapter 18:19, where we read these words. For I know him, that he will command his children and his households after him, that they shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him. All right. So that he will do the way. So keeping the way of the Lord is to do justice and judgment. So we are to do justice. Now, the Hebrew word here, I'm going to go to Genesis 18:19. I'm going to pull this up here. I'm going to look up the word justice here in the Old Testament. We'll have to see if how many of them use this word. The word justice here is this. All right.
Strong's H 6666. Tzedakah. Tzedakah.
Tzedakah. And it's used 157 times. It's translated righteousness, justice, right, righteous acts, moderately, righteously. The Strong's definition for the word is rightness, morally or figuratively, justice, moderately right. Not a lot of help there. They say the outline for biblical uses is it means justice or righteousness, righteousness in government. Okay, so in other words, righteousness or justice in the way government works. of judge, of law, of the Davidic king, the Messiah. Righteousness of God's attributes. God is just. He's a righteous God. Righteous in a case or cause. Righteous truthfulness. Righteousness as ethically right. Righteousness as vindicated. Justification. Propriety of people. Righteous acts. So this is the idea that you will conduct yourself in a just and a right way in regards to doing right and the way you treat people. All right. That seems to be the idea. All right. So let me go back and look up the word justice. All right. So the way of the Lord, so if we're going to keep the way of the Lord, we will do justice. We will do justice. We got to think about it. You don't hear a lot of preaching on justice. You don't. Not in many conservative churches. Deuteronomy 33:21. Deuteronomy 33:21 states this, and he provided the first part for himself, because therein a portion of the lawgiver was he seated, and he came with the heads of the people. He executed the justice of the Lord and his judgments with Israel. Right? 2 Samuel 8:15, and I know I'm not going back and looking at all the full context of all of those verses. I'm just trying to just really focus way in on just the word justice. You can go look at the context. Again, I don't want to do everything for you because I want you involved in this. 2 Samuel 8:15, and David reigned over all Israel, and David executed judgment and justice unto all his people. He executed justice. 2 Samuel 15:4. Absalom said, moreover, oh, that I were made judge in the land, that every man which hath any suit or cause might come unto me, I would do him justice. So Absalom wanted to be in charge so that he could, quote unquote, do justice. Now, again, did he want to do the right kind of justice? We could talk about it. But here, just please note, there seemed to be a common idea to do justice. We need Christians who are committed to doing justice, doing what is right, treating people a correct way. 1 Kings 10:9, we read this, blessed be the Lord thy God, which delighteth in thee, to set thee on the throne of Israel, because the Lord loved Israel forever. Therefore made he thee king to do judgment and justice. The king was to do justice. 1 Chronicles 18:14, so David reigned over Israel and executed judgment and justice among all his people. 2 Chronicles 9:8, blessed be the Lord thy God, which delighteth in thee, to set thee on his throne, to be king for the Lord thy God, because thy God loved Israel, to establish them forever. Therefore made he thee king over them, to do judgment and justice. Right? So we want the king, we want the government to do justice. Justice. I want to make sure you realize a cry for justice doesn't make you liberal. A cry for justice and a demand for justice doesn't make you liberal. That's what God wanted. That's the biblical idea, is do justice. We should all cry for justice. All right? Now, just remember, you can cry out for justice. That doesn't mean you turn around and then do injustice in order to try to accomplish justice. We could have a long discussion about that. Job 8:3. Doth God pervert judgment, or doth the Almighty pervert justice? That's probably in one of those speeches. So we won't look in. And I don't like using verses in Job, because you have to go figure out if it's a speech and is it one of Job's friends just saying something. You got to go, is he saying something accurately? So let's go to the book of Psalm 82:3. Oh, here we go. Psalm 82:3. Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. That's in the Bible. That's not a liberal talking point. Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. This is Psalm 82:3. Let me grab my Bible really quick. Psalm 82:3. Psalm 82:3. Give me 1 second. Psalm 82:3. See, here's Psalm 82, all right? Psalm 82, verse 1, God standeth in the congregation of the mighty. He judgeth among the gods. How long will you judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Defend the poor and the father. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Now, yes, we want the government to do justice to the afflicted and needy. But what about the church? What is our responsibility to do justice to the afflicted and needy? Where is our responsibility? What does that look like? But it seems like if you call for that, then you're almost immediately deemed you're not a conservative church. Why is this virtue seems to be undermined and demeaned and ignored by many in the Protestant church? Why? All right. That's Psalm 82:3. Psalm 89:14. Justice and judgment are the habitation of thy throne. Mercy and truth shall go before thy face. Psalm 119:21. I have done judgment and justice. Leave me not to mine oppressors. Proverbs 1:3, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, and judgment and equity. Proverbs, that was Proverbs 1:3. I may have said Psalm 1:3. Proverbs 1:3. Proverbs 8:15, buy me king's reign and princes declare justice. Proverbs 21:3, to do justice and judgment is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. I want you to hear that again. Proverbs 21:3, to do justice and judgment is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. See here, I'm going to jump really quick here. There's a lot more that we could look at. All right. So, that's interesting. They according to the King James, the word justice doesn't appear in the New Testament. The concept may appear. Now, if we go back, hang on, because the Catechism gave certain scriptures. There's a lot of scriptures there that we didn't look at. They gave, where did they give here? They gave Colossians 4:1. Colossians 4:1. Let me see how this is translated in the King James. Colossians 4:1. Colossians 4:1. Colossians 4:1. I think I'm going to have an assignment for you to do. Okay. Use the word just, not justice. Colossians 4:1. Masters, give your servants that which is just and equal, knowing that you also have a master in heaven. Give to them what is just and equal. So let's just look up the word just. Now, there's a lot more scriptures there we could have read about justice. Let's look up the word just. The word just occurs 87 verses in the King James. And the word just is used a couple of times in the New Testament, or a number of times in the New Testament. Titus 1:8 says, but a lover of hospitality, a lover of good men, sober, just. All right. So there's a number of Philippians 4:8 talks about it. There's a number of scriptures that talk about just. So here's what I would challenge you to do, because this is important. This really is important. Go ahead and look up justice and look at all the scriptures that mention justice. We read a lot of them, but not all of them. Look up the word just, see if it offers any more insight, if it gives you any more understanding. And I'm going to look really quick. Give me 1 second. I'm going to look up in a Bible dictionary. I got to lean all the way over here. I didn't think about doing this first, but let me look at this and see if there is an entry here for justice. It's going to be justification. Yeah, no justice. Oh, yes. There's a lengthy entry here for justice. Let's see what the Bible dictionary has to say. Justice, the practice of what is right and just. Justice, or judgment. Okay, let me read this again. The practice of what is right and just. Justice or judgment, the King James Version, specifies what is right, not only as measured by a code of law, but also by what makes for right relationship as well as harmony and peace. So the idea of justice here is not simply measured by a code of law, but what makes for right relationships as well as harmony and peace. All right? It's what makes harmony and peace. It's how we treat people. This is very much seems to deal with relationships and how people are treated. And we treated people in a just manner, in a just way. It continues, the English term justice has a strong legal flavor, but the concept of justice in the Bible goes beyond the law courts to everyday life. The Bible speaks of doing justice, whereas we speak of getting justice. Doing justice is to maintain what is right or to set things right. Justice is done when honorable relations are maintained between husbands and wives, parents and children, employees and employers and employees, government and citizens, and human beings and God. Justice refers to neighborliness, okay, if I can say the word correctly. In other words, being a good neighbor in spirit and action. We'll say it that way, all right? All right, so the idea of justice here, read this again. Justice is done when honorable relations are maintained between husbands and wives, parents and children, employers and employees, government and citizens, and human beings. God justice refers to neighborliness, again, it's a weird word to say, in spirit and action. Being a good neighbor, being neighborly, there we go. Being neighborly, that's another way of stating it, and being neighborly in action. Not just in thought, but in action. So I want you to think about this. It's not about getting justice. It's about doing justice. It's not about, we want justice and we want it now. It's about, we focus first and foremost on doing justice. And it's interesting that the Bible Dictionary looks at this idea of justice and many relationships that we may never consider it. So let's get really personal here really quick. As a husband, do you act justly? Do you do justice towards your wife? Do you act in a just manner? The idea of justice. You do that which will promote a right relationship. You do that. In other words, you're not fighting for your right. You're just trying to do what is just to promote a right relationship. How about towards your children? Do you act in a just manner? Justice in a just way. You deal with them in a just way. That's something to consider. Do you act justly toward your pastor? Do you act in a just way toward your pastor? Do you act in a just way toward your fellow employees? Do you act in a just manner toward your neighbors? To your fellow church members? This is a convicting thing. And the reason it's so convicting is because, again, prudent, that's the first virtue. Prudence is the first virtue. Being prudent is the first virtue. And it's not something you hear preached and preached and preached and preached and preached. We talk about so many other things. And this idea of justice, I just think it's been... I think we've allowed this term to be wrong. I think we've allowed this term to be stolen from Christians in the church. And the world wants out there, the world's screaming for justice. We want justice and we want it now. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it now? And and justice has become a battle cry in so many protests and marches. But Christians for some reason are like, oh, look at those people. They're liberals. We don't care about justice. We don't care about justice. Now, I know what they're meaning. They don't like this whole social justice thing. I've heard people criticize, a Christian singer. Well, they've turned to social justice. They're talking, in all their lyrics. They used to talk about God. Now they talk about social justice, and I don't want to listen to them anymore. Wait a minute. Isn't justice a biblical moral virtue? Can we not sing about doing justice? Is it not what the scriptures calls us to do? To do just, act justly. God cares about justice. We've got to see how this plays out in the life of the church, in the life of a believer, because I think in many cases we're like, justice, that's what liberals do. They worry about that. We've got, and I understand that if you confront someone, they'll say, no, that's not what we mean. I understand that. I'm just saying that we've almost allowed, you're worried about justice? We're worried about justice. You're concerned about justice in society? We're concerned about justice in society, and we long for it. Now, ultimately, the reason people don't act in a just manner is because we're sinners. Therefore, we need salvation. And then we have to struggle with and Christianity gives us the basis for justice, right? So in other words, instead of fighting people over social justice, we should be saying, your concern about social justice is our concern. We want justice. We're called as Christians to act in a just manner. We want justice. Now, we believe Christianity gives us a basis to know what justice is and what justice isn't. And we also acknowledge the reason no one acts just is because of depravity. So we can march against them, protest them, scream, yell, burn buildings down. It's not going to create justice because the lack of justice in the heart is because of the depravity in the heart. So we need to repent, we need faith in God, and then we take the scriptures and see how the scriptures calls us to live out justice in the world, and then we strive to do just that. All right, I'll stop right there. I know there were more scriptures there, but I didn't want to read all of them. I know I kind of stopped in the middle. I know I looked up just, and I know I didn't, and I know I completely messed up the word. You see, I messed up 2 words. Okay, let's offer a correction here. Let's do a correction here. The first word, let's see. Let me see. There's 2 words I messed up, and I know I messed them up, but I'm willing to admit it. Okay. You see, the first word I said is I wasn't looking at anything, so I forgot how to say it. See, all right. Let's see. Well, the first word was, I think I said it in a different way. The first word is demeaning, or to demean something, that we almost demean the idea of justice. So demeaning means to cause someone to lose their dignity and respect of others. Okay. See, let me hear. That which demeans, debase, degrades. We've demeaned and the idea of the sense of justice. We've almost demeaned it so it almost means nothing. That we've almost made it a bad thing. That's what I tried to mean. And the other one was, how did they use the word? It's in the Bible dictionary here. Let me see if I can find it here. See here. Is it this? Okay, here is the word. Here we go. Here's the word I was trying to say. I don't even have a way to say it here. Neighborliness is how. Let me see here. Let me look for another way. Does anyone? Usually they have a way to listen to how it's pronounced. Neighborliness. Neighborliness. It's a weird word. Okay, hang on here. I know what we'll do. Give me 1 second. Here we go. We're going to do it this way. All right. Hey, when all fails, go to YouTube. All right. When all fails, go to YouTube. Okay. Here we go. We can all laugh at me. Maybe if it'll play. Come on. You got to play. Maybe not. Yes. Here we go. I'm trying to get something to work and it won't work. Neighborliness. Okay, there we go. Neighborliness. I still can't say it. Being a good neighbor. Neighborliness. Okay, I got you. Neighborliness. That's yeah. I know the word neighborliness, but when I look at it, I'm like, that's not how that sounds. What is that? Neighborliness. So yes, being a good neighbor is a part of justice. So we've demeaned the idea of justice, and one of the aspects of justice is we carry out justice. All right, so we've demeaned justice, and one of the ideas of justice and carrying it out and being in neighborliness and the way we treat our neighbors and act towards our neighbors. But it goes beyond our neighbors to how we treat our wives, our kids, pastors, church, all of that. We need to get back to being people of justice. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to look up in a Bible dictionary the term justice. Read, if you can, multiple Bible dictionaries, see what they have to say in regards to it. And go ahead and look up all the scriptures that say justice or just. Justice and just. And try to compile a list of 5 verses, just 5, that you think really are powerful and profound about justice. Try to find 5. And whatever 5 you come up with, send them to me. I really want you to send them to me because I want to know what 5 you thought were the most powerful, because we may take those 5 and put them on the Bible memory app. So whatever 5 you come up with will probably end up on the Bible memory app. All right. And then I really want you to ask yourself, am I a just person? I want you to ask yourself that. Are you a just person? Is justice a virtue that people see in you? When people see you, do they say, man, that's a prudent person and that is a just person? Or do they see a lack of justice in you? All right, I'll stop right there. You can email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com, and you can mock me for not saying the word demean correct or saying the word neighborliness correct. You can mock me and make fun of me, and that's perfectly okay. Now, that probably won't be very just. You won't be very just in acting that way. See? All right. So I'm going to use this to protect me. All right. No, you can mock me. That's perfectly okay. All right. Everyone have a great day. And we may come back to this virtue one more time. Maybe. We'll see. It just depends on the feedback. So your feedback will determine what we do next. All right. Thank you. Continue to read the book, The Imitation of Christ by Thomas A. Kempis. It's a powerful book. Read it. Everyone have a great day. God bless.